I drive my car up to the lake as if there's someone to awake. I haven't been to bed for days, I live in a twilight haze. And I set my heart to the setting sun, and I hope that no one else has done it. And the drinks are never far, open up the bar. I miss you every single day. I wait until I start your way. I hate the way I'm straying into these perfect days.
We'll just come wandering in. Yeah. Hey, so Ollie, thanks for getting up this morning super early. Now you've got a couple of businesses. Start off by giving us a brief rundown on them. There's Fixinc. Is that how you pronounce
Fixinc.
it? Fixinc. And the other one is called Bushman Tours. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yep. And just give us a brief rundown on both of those and maybe how you came to be in Christchurch. And did you set up those businesses once you were here?
Officially, yes. I lived in Bristol for 4 years.
Cool.
And I was over there with my band at the time. I mean, we're still kind of together.
Yeah.
But,
distance.
Yeah, I mean,
makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah, well, that and babies. So anyway, that's another story. But we were in Bristol, and I worked at an agency over there, publication, and I don't know, there was maybe 20, 30 of us as a group. Like we all kind of knew each other, gaining skills, and just found myself doing a lot of work outside of work for these new clients or people we knew through the agency. And it was just cool. And I was like, man, I want to keep doing this. And then when we decided to move back to New Zealand, I was thinking, well, how do I keep doing that? I don't know anyone here at the moment, and so I'm just going to be really selfish and just keep doing it and just see if people want to come and, do some contracts with me and some projects. And honestly, like, it's bad, but it's probably like nearly a year where I didn't register it. I didn't have a website, didn't have a brand. It was just kind of, these opportunities would keep coming up, and then all of a sudden they were outside of Christchurch. So I was going to Wellington, lived in Wellington for a bit. The agency kind of grew into itself naturally over about a year or so. About 2 years in, so this is probably late 2017 now, I'd say, was out for a tramp with my partner, and just started thinking about this concept around, well, what else can I do that's more outdoors? And, I love the agency life, and I love the creative side of things that we do, but I wanted to transfer that a little bit more into the outdoor world, and particularly around conservation as well. That was always like a big passion for me, and I wasn't really getting that in the UK. Wasn't experiencing it, wasn't kind of next to it as much as I would have liked to have been. And I would say 2018 just was like, right, start another business, and that was Bushman Tours.
So the concept behind that is it usually international travellers would know they're coming to Christchurch, and they'll be into the outdoors, and they'll be perhaps doing a bit of research and wanting to do some tramps and see the local area, and then it's just an opportunity to hire a guide, and a portion of that goes towards conservation efforts in that area, or what that guide would like to contribute it towards.
So I think at its core, it's sharing economy. That's kind of what it is. To be fair, even Airbnb do something similar. They call it Airbnb experiences. It's local experts is what we call them, which are called Bushmen and Bushwomen. And we've even got a bush dog, actually. And these guys, they all know their regions, they all know the history, the conservation, the stuff that needs to make that place active around that, but also what makes it unique. And the idea came when we were trying to get to this tramp over in North Canterbury, and it snowed so heavily we couldn't even drive any further. And we're like, well, we've packed our bags, we've gotten all this way. And this farmer like picked us up, and it was about a 40 minute drive, and he was just giving us all of this like information about his farm and the land. And I was like, man, I bet there's more Kiwis that would want to do this, and particularly get paid for it as well. So yeah, I mean, typical customer. Well, it's been funny because of COVID, obviously. Like that was just such a pain in the ass, and it just came out of nowhere. I mean, I contract for a resiliency firm, a consultancy in Australia and New Zealand. My dad works as one of the executives there. So everyone was always kind of talking about pandemic stuff, and then when it happened, I was like, oh shit, I can't believe it. Like, we sort of prepared for it, but then when the borders closed, it was like, what? I just started a tourism business a couple of months ago, and it was a bit of a game changer, but it is what it is. But it's been pretty cool because we've really come up with some pretty unique ideas. Again, just for conservation, less about like the tour and more about how do we help there. And one of the ideas is putting a little number on traps, and if you buy one before you go out, customer has to lug it on their back. And these things are made out of wood; they're pretty heavy.
Possum traps,
possums, stoats, rats. So you take it out and you set it. You've got your own unique number on top of it that you just write on, and then that gets sent back to us. And every time the bushman goes out again, they have a look, see if something's in it. If it is, then they mark it as captured one, pest or whatever, and then we email the customer for life, basically saying this is how many you've contributed to. So it's little ideas like that actually continue to make it personal when they've left. Which is important because people do go back to their lives and they kind of forget that connection they had,
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I can totally I've done little booker batches around the place. There was one recently on Banks Peninsula on a place called Goffs Bay, and and the one of the local farm owners came down on the beach while we were there and just told us so much information, similar kind of thing. Was pointing at things up on the hill. This is where the Maori people came over and had their crops. You can still see the lines and all this type of thing. It's super valuable. It just totally changes your perspective on a place.
I think New Zealand's always been so good at keeping it quite. The culture and the history is kind of there, but there are people who wouldn't necessarily become a tour guide who still want to share their knowledge, and that was our kind of take. Was we don't call any of our guides. That's why they're called bushmen, bushwomen. All these different concepts that we try to come up with to make them feel a little bit different as well. So,
wow. So we're looking at the borders reopening soon, and that's going to kind of slowly come back to life. That's you're hoping for that sort of.
Obviously, I follow this really closely every day, and I'm pretty fortunate enough to have some connections straight through to the likes of Air New Zealand executives and and other travel agencies, and realistically we're talking minimum of 2 years until it's back to an acceptable level. There's even rumours, I mean, it could be 5 to 10 years until it's pre-COVID, and that's more because of the fact that so many businesses are going under, and so there just won't be much availability.
And the infrastructure will kind of have been destroyed to a certain degree. I
mean, if you go down to Queenstown at the moment, it's scary. You walk past, like, I would say one every 5 or 6 shops that are closed down there. And so anyway, there's this thing around, well, how long do we want to wait? And I'll say right now we're probably not going to wait. We're not going to necessarily shut down the business because we don't have to. We don't have the overheads that a lot of tour businesses do. We don't have vans because we never needed them. There's no hotels and stuff. So, but the thing is, I'm personally not enjoying it at the moment because all I feel like I'm doing is having a virtual argument with the government about when they should open the borders.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of opinion around that, and I just want to actually go back to the roots, which was helping conservation efforts and helping locals share what they do.
Yeah.
So I think realistically this year we'll probably pivot to what will essentially be a new concept. The core of the business will be there, but it will be a new concept that probably relates more to actually the sporting world. Which I guess, tramping is that a little bit, but looking at things like athletes instead of necessarily a tramping guide. Looking at athlete camps, all these sorts of things that are going on. I mean, the core of being outside in New Zealand is still there. The infrastructure of the website is still there. But that will allow us not to necessarily worry about whether the borders are open or not.
Yeah, true.
So
that's an awesome pivot. That one's but that wouldn't have happened without that adversity and stuff, would it have? It's kind of ironic that it kind of pushes us in certain directions and makes us go look at things under the microscope a lot more. But it helps us kind of strip away any unwanted kind of notions and perhaps ideals or dreams that might not be useful. Really strip it away and get that essence of what the potential is, or what you can do and what's possible. That's kind of cool. Far out, but also I can sense the frustration.
It's more. There's like there's a resource, time, and financial input. As you know, you're running businesses, and I think when something's that out of your hands, that happens, which you kind of, we were lucky because we had business continuity plans, we had crisis management plans, we had a risk assessment, we had just like all this stuff that most businesses don't have.
So that's interesting. You said before one of your clients is a resilience thing, and that's what presumably that company operates like. Is that what it's doing? Is setting up businesses in order before it goes through a hard time to be prepared?
I've got 5 years experience with these guys, and my dad's done it. He's military background, so resiliency is just like blood and bones to him, and so I always kind of was aware of it. And then when I came back from the UK to start my agency, my first client was Risslogic. Risslogic, they've been around for maybe 15 years, probably arguably the leading supplier of that resiliency consultancy, and it's just been amazing because I work with them 3, 4, 5 days a week, and I'm learning all this stuff about how to set up plans properly, and my dad always likes to say, it's not if but when. So when the pandemic did happen, I wasn't that surprised or thrown off guard. We had cash reserves, we had another business that could help fund it, we had all these different plans. Well, how do we go online? Well, we're already online because our whole business is a website. So it wasn't too difficult, but it was like, right, I've seen what has to be done in adversity and in a crisis like this, and it's a lot of work. And I'm not even joking you. When our current website, that was a 13-month project with one guy, Andy Crone, who's just bloody legend. He's so talented at what he does, and we worked for about 13 months to set up this website, and the day after we set it live, the whole country went into lockdown. And I just leant back in my chair. I remember it going live, a relief, but then just like, you can't make this up.
Was your dad of like a lot of support then? Did he say this is character building, son?
He said, right, you got to activate your plans. And I said, no, I don't. I'm going to bed. I've had enough of this. He was pretty good about it. And I mean, he's co-director of Bushman Tours anyway. So I said, right, well, actually, to answer your question, I said, no, this is your problem. This is why I hired you. You have to fix this. It was interesting because actually, I still can't believe this to this day, but we had bookings coming through in that first lockdown. And I was like, but our flexibility was, you can just book it, and if we're still in lockdown, we'll just keep moving the date out. And that was really cool. but it was also still like the unknown of how the government was going to handle it.
Yeah.
Was this really bad? You know.
So as far as because those ripple effects, like to begin with, I remember, pretty early on, even in the lead up to it, I think there were really unusual kind of, some businesses were facing losses, others were getting unexpected kind of windfalls of like, what the heck, we didn't expect everyone to go out and buy house paint or DIY gear, right? And they would kind of flat tack run off their feet. And now it's still happening, right? And you're sort of saying, there is that perception. I think the classic example is the rebuild of Christchurch, in 2 years. And they've been saying that for the last 10 years. In 2 years' time, it's going to be, we'll all be up and running.
Yeah.
And when we opened 3 years ago in this little espresso bar, it was, it took a wee while to realise that it's not going to be 2 years. It's going to be 10, 15, 20 years or something. Yeah. And there wasn't really a magic bullet that was going to help speed things up or anything like that. So you were kind of like, all of a sudden there was a realisation that you were just left alone on this desert island or whatever, and you were going to have to survive in whatever way you could. I still don't know. I still think, man, a long time, 10 years. So you're sort of what you've seen and heard, you're thinking the tourism, it's not, because the average person on the street, they might think, oh, cool, the borders are open, sweet that, the switch has been flicked and everyone's going to come flooding back or something. But
they might. I went out tramping this weekend. I've never seen it so busy.
Right.
I mean, honestly, there was a group partying outside the hut with about 4 or 5 tents, and even pre-COVID, I'd never seen it that busy.
Yeah.
So I do think Kiwis are getting more active because they've got this opportunity. You can drive down to Queenstown now and not be stuck around behind 15 camper vans, and it's pretty cool. But for us, for what we do, most Kiwis don't need a guide for it. They want to become one.
No.
I mean, when we released our campaign we called it the First 50, and it was basically the first 50 people to apply, and they ended up being like nearly 250, and I wasn't even advertising it that much, and so there was no shortage of getting people to want to do that sort of stuff, but for them to pay for it was a different story, and that's why hunting was a big one. That was, Kiwis will do that, and they will need a guide. It was a bit of a when the borders closed and we went into lockdown, a lot of lessons were learned, and I'm talking within 48 hours.
Right.
Just the messaging and people cancelling or the people who were booking were a new type of audience, and you've really got to, when they come through, you've got to find out everything you can about them as quick as possible, so okay, well, if this is now my audience, how do I serve them moving forward? And the following year, 2 years now, there was, the thing I've kind of said why we need to pivot is because it takes about 3 months to get a relatively sizable trip organised for Kiwis. They will procrastinate, and it's I've got another mate actually who wants to tag onto this tour. Is it all right? I'm like, well, we're leaving next week, so not really. It was just really random little challenges that, in the grand scheme of things, weren't that bad, but you've really got to think about how you're going to approach
nevertheless them. They're still unexpected, and you don't know them until they come around the corner at you.
But as you were saying earlier, some businesses did well, and where Bushman Tours kind of really struggled or is struggling, Fixinc, my marketing design agency, was the opposite. We had the most sales and clients, and my team grew in less than a year. It was shocking. It was like businesses just realised they needed to go digital. They needed to look good and know what they were doing on a digital landscape. It was, I couldn't keep up, to be honest.
It's kind of cool, actually. I've just realised, like, you've got one foot in both worlds, right? One's like undeniably like the physical reality and the nature, and then the other one is like the digital world, like the the metaverse, or whatever,
Yeah,
But that's I don't know. It just dawned on me then. But man, what a great place to be.
Yeah,
kind of. I mean, obviously, perhaps.
Yeah, well, the digital side of things is useful to know. That's for sure. We're working, and the cool thing is we're still working with Kiwis. We're still working with some pretty interesting businesses who do good things, and that's again kind of one of our, I guess, values, if you want to call it that. But we only work with businesses who are actively making a difference in the world, and that's quite a broad spectrum.
Yeah,
but when you speak to them for the first time on the phone, you can kind of tell pretty quick what they're into, and whether it's just financial gain or are they actually doing something. So as a result, we've got some pretty passionate individuals, entrepreneurs, business owners who are really doing that slug, and
we often talk about that here because we're trying to just constantly think of new ideas. And even yesterday, we've released these little jars of food, caramelized onion and things like this, and starting to sell them. And in fact, I'm trying to put them online at the moment. But we were talking about the quality of them. A customer came back and said, "This is really good," and we were like, "Cool, that's awesome." And then I mentioned another brand that's sort of more in the supermarkets and stuff. Started off small, grew to a certain size, and then it kind of went from quality to making money and stuff. And we talked about that transition of sometimes, like when businesses do that. And because I don't know, it was
it's this constant process of trying to hit the mark, right? This seems really loud, Dave. Could you just drop it down a notch?
Oh, right.
Thank you.
Yeah, have you guys read the article 1,000 True Fans?
No.
I think that would be really relevant for this. It's like Tim Ferriss and all those Ryan Holidays and stuff mention it quite often, and it's there's two versions, there's long form and short form, but he talks about the almost science around starting a business or a product, especially something creative, and you only need 1,000 people to be passionate and buying it regularly to never have to worry about finances or the growth of your business. And he's worked out the average is always around about 1,000 people, which is doable, right?
That's not too
totally
bad.
Doable.
Yeah.
So have a read of it, because I think in times like this, especially when you start something new, you're like, man,
it's just too big.
There's a lot to do, and actually people often try and think really big, and I'm seeing that in Christchurch as well. I'll go and help a new business who needs a website or a brand identity, and they'll want to take on the world. Right, I'm like, mate, just take on city centre for now. See if that works, and then take it from there. But I mean, I will be expecting to see that in the supermarket in the next couple of months.
Oh well, who knows?
I mean, as soon as you say that, Ollie, it's like there's an instant feeling of relief. It's like, wow, there's a target that's
achievable.
And it's got all the good psychological biofeedback mechanisms involved as well.
I mean, you guys you'll get way over halfway there just from this physical location, and people coming in and seeing that, and then, as you say, if someone and the other thing is, if the product's good and then they tell someone else about it, you're going to reach 1,000 really quick, and you're probably not going to know you've reached that 1,000 either. And that's where we usually, with our clients, go from day one, you need to know how you're recording this. And stock levels is an obvious thing, but you don't know if those stock levels are actually because people like it or
it's just new.
Exactly. So but I think Christchurch is a place that's just so well lended to that sort of stuff, because everyone kind of knows each other as well, and you get it out and get friends to try it out and stuff. But
so there's that sort of sense of community is beneficial in that. Is that because you can test it off people and you can kind of bounce your ideas around off a smaller kind of group of people rather than 5 million or something? Or
I think it's that. One thing I've learned in Christchurch, when I started Bushman Tours and when I started my agency, it was inspired by the people I was around, which was at the Collect just around the road, and you know, back in the day, and Lara ran that, and she now works with me at Fixinc, and the immediate thing was like getting feedback from other professionals, but it was never biased. It was always really good, credible feedback, even though we'd then go out to the pub and have a good laugh. But before that, they were all very experienced at what they do. And so, yeah, there's that community, but then the next level up is, are these people credible enough to give you valid feedback that you can then action straight after? And that was a weird experience for me, because I really liked everyone who worked there, but then at the same time, they'd be like, mate, that sucks. Don't release that.
Yeah.
That was terrible. And I'm like, oh, shit, thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
You know, so...
That type of thing can happen in bigger firms where you can kind of where you've got those voices, you know, and you're kind of paying them to be at the desk, whereas you were kind of taking advantage of a kind of a natural kind of environment and critically sitting down and having a critical analysis of. Yeah. Presumably, you got to poke fun at other people's work.
Oh, big time! Yeah, there's some corkers coming through. Yeah, but it was great because, you know, that's what you did, and then you go, right, sorry for hammering your product. I'll buy you a beer. Let's go out.
Yeah,
you know, and I mean that shared office space changed my life big time.
Brilliant.
Just because of the people that were there and what they were like, and Lara running that show was just. I mean, she's born to do that sort of stuff. It's ridiculous. So I'm also extremely privileged to continue to work with her.
She would come in here, Lara. Yeah, she's awesome.
Definitely get her on here.
I've been trying.
I'll let her know. I'll let her know. If there's coffee involved, she'll be here.
Or a smoothie.
Yeah, a smoothie.
That's true.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. I love that idea of that collaborative thing, and I don't feel like I've had an opportunity to do that. Maybe I don't know. Just
being able to be in that environment where you feel, you know, safe, and have people who know what they're talking about and who you trust, and then being able to say that sucks. I mean, that's such a step up in the organisational structure. You're already starting off from an awesome place.
Yeah, and I think. What I noticed at the Collect is the experience that the people had in other agencies or clients, and so it wasn't just like, yeah, that's a good idea or that's not going to work. It was backed by why, and we've got this really big. I mean, it's literally a term and condition at my agency where when we talk about handing over a brand identity, a website logo, or whatever it is, usually it's the concept, it's the research and development. But we have a clause that says none of this is personal opinion, which is really, really important, because I think everyone falls into that trap of it's all subjective, which it is, but you need to provide the evidence to why something might not work.
Totally.
And you still might be wrong, even if you've got a wealth of evidence, but as long as the client or your friend knows that it's backed by some sort of research that's been done way outside of your remit, you know, and that's been something that's really helped us as an agency, because it also hasn't come back to us where we've kind of suggested something and then it hasn't worked for them. So we'll always take it with a grain of salt, you know.
Yeah. No, that's a really powerful thing. I mean, it needs to be justified. It can't just be... I mean, sometimes there's a bit of instinct and there's a bit of a gut kind of feel in things, but usually if you trace that back, there will be a foundation for it, like it's coming from somewhere, it's not just imaginary. But man, getting into... If it's just, subjective...
well, it sort of goes back to your dad's area of expertise. You know, you can't mess around in those sort of theatres.
No, true.
You have to... It's evidence-based. You can't just suddenly go on, this is maybe what I think.
He's got... I was actually saying to Ross, who told me about you guys, I was saying, just try and get my dad on, because I know you had the guy the other day who did risk management, I think.
Leadership training, but definitely from a military perspective.
That's it, This has never been more relevant, this kind of topic, and people are really starting to listen to it now, because some really big businesses with big financial backing have gone under because borders closed. You know? And it only takes one little thing that you think is impossible to completely end you.
Exactly.
And he's the guys I work with there. It's all about really trying to think outside of the box for how you operate as a business. But one thing I really love what they say is if your building's on fire, flooded, or got a protest in front of it, doesn't matter. All of those things that are happening are irrelevant. It's about the fact that you can't get in your building. You can't do business as usual. And everyone gets quite, with the pandemic, we're worked up because the borders are closed. No, that's not the problem. If you can't have customers who are domestic, that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's not international customers aren't here. Your product isn't suited for New Zealand.
Yeah.
So there's all these kind of considerations that I think hit people hard. But yeah, these guys are doing some pretty fascinating work at the moment. Some really big businesses as well, and small, but it's interesting to sit and watch it unfold.
Well, I mean, yeah, you could be, I don't know, you mentioned before that you kind of, did you actually try to communicate with the government and express your opinions? Or because that's, that's like a brick wall, right?
Yeah, it's challenging because I've got personal stakes in it where I've got a business that really relies on the government doing everything perfect, which is quite rare. I've got my friends and family in the UK who are like, man, you guys are so lucky. You don't know how lucky you are. And I'm like, well, it's relative, right? Like, we are lucky. I was lucky before COVID happened here. And so, there's this kind of annoyance around it not being perfect, but I'm still running a successful business and having a lot of fun doing it. So I can't complain too much, but I think it was challenging because I've got direct links into people in government through the work that we've done at Risslogic, and a lot of their clients are local councils and those types. And everyone's frustrated. Like, it's, that's the other thing. Is like, these guys aren't just sitting there going, well, deal with it, And they're people as well.
Yeah.
And because there's so many involved, majority of them are going to be a bit annoyed about the situation. But it does help. Like, I mean, I knew we were going into that second lockdown about a week before the rest of the country did, and so I had to keep it quiet, and then I'm trying to work and figure out, well, what have we got to do to pivot to that ahead? And fortunately it helped, but it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. The plane was still on the way down, kind of.
Yeah, that's it. Like, and now you look at what's happening in Europe. It's like, wow, what next?
Right. That one will affect all. I mean, I filled up the truck with diesel the other day, and it came to like $137, and it's like insane.
Yeah,
that was a bit of a shock. But all of these little things can. Yeah, I think it. I think we forget how unexpected life can be, and we think we're kind of insulated from it. But in actual fact, all of that kind of thing can just kick in within a moment's notice, or no notice. Yeah,
these are like the classic, like ancient understandings as well, because obviously humans are just like us centuries ago with the Sun Tzu, the art of war, and stoicism, totally resilience training, but. Yeah, ancient.
Oh, okay. Yeah, true.
Yeah, like, stoicism's just like... I think it's coming back because of...
I think it is.
Like modern day stoicism is definitely... I mean, it's something I'm passionate about, and there's such good materials. I mean, I'm literally reading one of Ryan Holiday's books at the moment. And
absolutely brilliant.
He really simplifies and modernises it so that it's still relevant. And it's shocking. You get Seneca, for example, who has a line... that sounds like it was written last week for our time, and and it is really important because personal resilience at the moment is like vital. I think if you stop and think I'm really struggling at the moment, there's usually it always relates back to your resilience isn't up to scratch. It's not as looked after as it could be. Yeah. And
our culture encourages this kind of flaky kind of... Well... but our culture does, it's very much, this is in, that's out, this is in, this is in, and there's a constantly, even fashion itself has, however many seasons, it's just ridiculous, it's insane. And a lot of that, there was obviously the supply chains and things like that are coming under a huge amount of pressure, and that was not helped by culture, and ultimately, what's at the bottom of that? Well, we are kind of, and we're the ones who kind of get to decide what's cool and what's not cool.
Yeah.
And if we say that having, a million different seasons in a shop, like clothing items, well, then that's what is going to work. So we have, we all have a part to play, right?
Mm. Yeah, and I think, you look at the last 2 years it's hard, but it's such an opportunity. I mean, last year was definitely the hardest professional year of my life.
Yeah.
It was really, really tough. And, we went away for Christmas. You do that whole thing where you're like, reflect on the year and talk about all the good things. And my partner is extremely positive and very optimistic. And she's like, but tell me, what was the best thing? And the best thing for me was actually the worst thing. But then when I reflected on it, I was like, if that didn't happen, the amount of lessons I learned in that experience were honestly like 5 or 10 years worth of lessons, just into about 2 months worth of a case study. So it was like, wow, okay, that was hard. I'm really exhausted, but let's see if I can do things different this year and learn from those. Because the worst thing is if you repeat those mistakes, the next year. And so I think this whole COVID pandemic, the war, the recession, gas prices, learn what you can do next time to stop that from affecting you, which is, I think, comes back to that stoicism.
100%. I'm not sure a lot of people would even know what resilience is, or just expecting, the crappy stuff, that more shit's going to be on its way. Prepare for it.
Buy more toilet paper.
Yep.
Yeah, well, you might not have toilet paper. What are you going to do then?
Yeah, resilience is just getting through it without toilet paper.
Yeah. No. But obviously, focusing on the vision, the dynamic vision, whatever, but knowing I get punched in the guts a few times when I wasn't expecting it. And I think you're right, Dave, with this culture that we're in is a little bit, what was the word you used?
Oh, I said flaky.
A little bit flaky, and that's fine, it's just a natural cycle. But I think a lesson of that flakiness is that you can't remain flaky, because it's just personally just unsatisfying. It's awful. But one of the ways out of the flakiness, it was obviously to take a bit of self-responsibility, and that can go back with what you were saying before, Ollie, have that vision of just affecting 1,000 people. You just have to be able to take a little bit of responsibility, and you can just expand it out. So it's totally doable. It's not like some big impossible vision, but that can obviously go to great places. But you might get punched in the guts too.
Yeah.
Well, you will.
Yeah, exactly.
You definitely will. And that's the learning of stoicism, right? It's like it's knowing that it's coming, like the bad stuff, but when it's there, you go, there you are. I knew you were there. You were coming. And again, my partner might say, well, that could be like a pessimistic view. And I think it is to an extent, but it's also like, it's going to hurt when it happens, but probably not as bad as people who think that everything's cushy.
Yeah.
And it is going to be smooth sailing, particularly around new businesses. People starting businesses at the moment, and they're very, very excited. And it's a hard conversation to tell them that this will probably fail. Or if it doesn't, and you're lucky to get through, because it is luck. It's you can work really hard, but there's a massive element of luck. But at the end, it's going, how was the person who was running that business? Were they resilient enough to deal with all these punches and just kind of go, well,
gee whiz,
it is what it is, and carry on.
Yeah. It's kind of like childbirth, right? It's sort of, you could be accused. Sorry, 3 guys talking about childbirth probably isn't a good idea, but. Nevertheless, I'll just rock on with the analogy.
You're in now, mate.
Yeah. It's a vicarious.
No, but look, it's painful, and what kind of spin are you going to put on it that's going to take away?
It's happening.
The actual, you have to give birth to a baby.
Yeah, that baby's coming out.
Yeah, despite the positivity that you can spin on it, that the baby's coming, you're still going to have to work through that that pain and stuff. So, I think, it's just having that expectation and being prepared for it is probably better than not knowing at all. Yeah.
And I think with Christchurch, what I've seen, particularly with our Christchurch clients, is, you know, as we were saying before we started, people have kind of been through worse a little bit. Like, yeah, COVID was bad, but...
You would have thought we would have learnt by now.
Yeah. Like, there's certainly... well, I can always tell the out-of-towners when they come in and go, this is the worst thing that's happened to me. I'm like, is it? Okay, fair enough. But, you know, like, I've got a client who had a shop, a butchery, that he lost in the earthquake. Lost all his money trying to get it fixed again because the insurance wouldn't cover it. Decided to go out on the road, innovated and had a truck that he just ran his butchery in. So he was now remote, which just blows my mind to this day. I just think it's such an awesome pivot.
It is super cool.
Yeah, just going to the customers and parking up, and he still does it today.
Oh, cool.
Then he gets another shop, and you just think, like, where does the drive come from where you're not giving up, even though who would have thought an earthquake's going to wipe out your shop and no one's going to be able to buy your stuff anymore. And then we took him online, and it was just like, this guy's back to normal. He's actually thriving. Would he have got that truck if the earthquake didn't happen? Probably not.
No, exactly,
you know?
So he's filling a gap in the market that perhaps didn't know even existed previously. Yeah.
Big time, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Man, that resilience is so powerful. You know, I know people who are just, you know, carry around a lot of indifference. You know, they're on the dole and all that sort of stuff. It's like the opposite to that guy. I mean, they might be resilient when they're trying to find their next dope score or something. Yeah. They'd be like super clever and work out the process there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like,
you know,
people,
they do have that.
People have their techniques for stuff, don't they? And sometimes it's just in the wrong place.
So, but it's meeting their need.
Yeah, and that's survival. And if you're a business owner and you're having to try to make money, it's just a matter of survival, isn't it? I guess.
I think when you look at, I'm really fascinated by what's happening in Ukraine at the moment. Not necessarily because of the politics and, you know, that it is really bad, but it's the people. One thing I was saying to my partner and our mate Ross the other day, actually, from what I can tell, this is the first time in history where the whole world has come together virtually to be against something like this. And it's all being recorded and everyone's learning lessons from it. There's these videos and pictures of, you know, and the other thing to really point out here is that it's a European, mostly white nation. So it does feel more personal to the Western world. And that's why this is kicked off so much, because there are equally way more violent wars happening in parts of Africa and so on.
Yeah.
But that to me isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it's teaching people the realities of it. But then also looking at these individuals in Ukraine who are just, they're so ready for what's coming. It's quite amazing. You see some of the like literal boys in the street who have joined the army who are like, no, we're not leaving. Yeah. You know, their president at the moment. I mean, what a dude. I mean, he's gonna... They're already talking about movies about him and stuff, but it'll happen because he's so inspiring. But it is that resiliency that he's got.
And it's the resilience in knowing what's important.
Yeah, your it's fundamental like, kind of purpose and values, right?
Exactly. And if we give those up, it's just not going to go anywhere good.
Yeah.
So it probably is actually worth dying for.
And I think that's why people are doing it, you know, like... my dad, military background, this whole thing feels like it's familiar to me because he fought in Bosnia when they had their civil war. And I remember him coming home 4 years. We were in Germany, living in Germany, and he'd go back and forth, do 3-6 months in Bosnia. And it's the same sort of situation. I mean, they weren't being invaded, but the people, it was still the same, you know. Yeah. And... when we now look at what's happening in Ukraine and the similarities about how people are dealing with it is quite interesting, because this is 30 years ago, 20, 25 years ago. And the response is still the same from those civilians, you know, people dealing with it. And that's what we should be learning from, big time. Use this, as I said earlier, we've got to use this opportunity. We can't go over to Ukraine and fight necessarily. So we have to use this opportunity to learn from it, not do it again, use it in our personal lives.
A lot of people are just sick of war.
Yeah.
Now, like just more than ever, it's just awful.
Yeah.
And like we see people, and I think more and more people are realizing, holy shit, that person's just like me.
Yeah.
Because they've invented the internet and everything. You see across all the cultures, it's like that literally could be me just sitting there, and I could be in that situation.
Yeah.
It's definitely made it a lot more personal.
Yeah.
It's like, how would I think, how would I react? What would my value set be?
Yeah.
There's definitely a sense of disbelief and perhaps confusion as to why, one nation or even one person might decide to have that, like carry out that invasion and all the rest of it. And you mentioned the recording of it and stuff like that, because it's a concern of mine that people have such short memories when it comes to politics or even just business or whatever. We tend to forget so quickly, even in the face of having evidence and having, I don't know, it freaks me out how things get manipulated, twisted, propaganda gets used, and history gets redefined or
revised.
Yeah, revised, that's the word.
That's what's going to be interesting about this is how you look at World War II, maybe even Vietnam War. It's almost like a legend to younger people because we weren't there, and so when we go and see the artifacts of it, it is historic in the sense that it's, the closest you can get to it is a Steven Spielberg film, and so you're like, well, yeah, did it really happen? I mean, I see, I've been to Auschwitz and I've seen that place, and you can't believe that actually happened, even though you're standing in it.
Wow.
And so I think with things like Ukraine and similar, Bosnia and stuff, you've got that. It's actually been covered more than any war probably ever has. But as you say, when the next thing comes up, people will be like, oh, well, now I'm dealing with this. So it doesn't matter about Ukraine. Yeah.
I saw a tweet, I can't remember who it was, but they said it was, I don't know if it was a joke, but they said, it's only Poland. Just those two, 3 or 4 words. But I think the gist of it was, people are perhaps saying, it's only Ukraine, and potentially we'll be saying in a couple of years' time, it's only Poland, or it's only the next one on the as they shift across.
That, eventually, it's going to be only you.
Yeah. There's that kind of concept, but I don't know where I was going with that train of thought. But I don't know. It is a worry. I mean, it's a worry for everyone, isn't it? It's just this idea of this fighting and this battle and this kind of killing, like taking over, and boom, it's like a tidal wave.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about what you're talking about, how we have short memories and that level of sophistry. I think it's a good word for it. People doing magician tricks on the news, and people with agendas, and let's just forget all of that. So we really need to have our critical thinking skills. I try and practice mine quite a lot. So it's like, actually, I do remember that, and I remember the nuances of what happened then. And so when someone goes, don't worry about that, I can say, well, I do need to worry about that because of this, this, and this, and I do remember that. And then you're dealing with gaslighting and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
that's right. I think Kiwis especially may have this idea, it's all just going to pan out. It'll all pan out. It's all going to be, she'll be right, right?
If you brought that up to my dad, he would leave because I won't mention them, but there's some huge businesses, like very well known Kiwi, Australian, global businesses that we've worked with.
That's one of their values.
Yeah, it's like she'll blow over. But what if it doesn't? And what if it does, but it's after you figure out how to fix it? That's a crazy one.
Because there's a measured response. It doesn't necessarily need to be full swing kind of prepping or anything like that. But
I think the big thing here, and going back to your point, was that critical thinking. And another way we look at summarising, I guess from a business perspective, is situational awareness, and being able to, okay, something's going on. Does it affect me? Is it going to affect me? Is the borders going to affect me? And it's not about the past or what's coming up in the future, what's happening right now that we need to be aware of. And a lot of people don't have good situational awareness. They just sit and wait and go, this will blow over in a sec. It's all right, guys.
Yeah.
There's no way it's going to affect us.
Yeah.
And having that as a skill is definitely one of the biggest things I've learned from working with Wrist Logic and military as well. I mean, if you don't have situational awareness in the military, you're literally going to die. And that's, you take that into business and you will do well, I think. So.
Yeah, I think, I didn't realise all of the different peaks and troughs that after COVID hit, like our business was going to go through and stuff. It just wasn't, I wasn't able to see that far, ahead, or even begin to understand that how it might affect us. Yeah. I saw a film the other day, Peter Jackson. It was about World War One. They Shall Not Grow Old. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
It was the documentary.
Yeah.
And that was really good.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's cool. It's it starts off. It's all actual footage, and it's just been kind of restored, and they've added sound to it, or they've got actual, and then they've just got overlaying the footage. They've just got, I guess, survivors or people that have come back, just their experiences and their retelling of certain events, like from being recruited all the way through to going back home. And I think for me that was one of the biggest things was when they were recruited, obviously the age was 19, but a whole stack of them, they were like 15, 16, 17, 18. And that was almost expected. There was an expectation that they would lie so they could then serve. So that was kind of interesting on that end. Then on the other end, when they did come back from war, man, they just did not... It didn't really get talked about much, and people just had no comprehension. They were just expected to go back to work the next day, and it was just remarkable how they were treated. But I don't know, different times obviously now. But
my dad, I think, did really well. He's got some old regiment friends that are still in the army, or they left and didn't know what to do. And he was ambitious enough. It's a really funny story. He was in the army for 26 years, something like that. Again, from when he was 18, because there was nothing else to do. He wasn't going to become a professional footballer like he wanted to. So, I'll join the army. Gets far through the ranks. Tank commander in Bosnia. Ran about 95, I think it was 96. Gets headhunted from an IT company who I think worked for British Telecoms. They said, we'll pay you to skill up on IT and then you come contract for us. He's like, I don't know about that. That's like, I'm going to go sit at a desk. I used to drive a tank for a living, This is really weird. And they showed him how much he'd get paid, and then he went to his boss at the time in the army, and boss said, if you stay another 5-8 years, you'll get your pension. He went, yeah, but they're offering me this. And he's like, oh no, you should leave. Yeah, that's double your pension a year. Yeah, no, leave.
Wow, sweet.
And so now he's in this IT world, and I think mentally that helped him straight away, because he had these responsibilities that were really hard, and this is this is pre Y2K and all that sort of stuff, and did really well out of it. But then equally had colleagues in the army who didn't take that leap when they should have, and then kind of went a little bit. I mean, some of them have done really well, of course, but if they go back into society and work normal 9 till 5s, you can see in them that it's going to be harder. Yeah.
So that's having a flexibility in order to be able to change. Yeah, and that is hard, suddenly using the skills that you've learned in one area and putting them on a completely different area. I mean, you just want to stay in the same one. It's more it's easier. But I suppose it's a form of resiliency.
It was
but it's more just
awesome of your dad to jump across like that.
Yeah,
totally.
It was wild. And so a couple of months ago, we were driving to the Paparoa actually to do. We were trialing it out, and we were driving late at night in the car, and we were talking about my business. And I said, "Can you walk me through what it was like for you to be a contractor in the UK?" Because I mean, he was making stupid money. I just remember coming home sometimes and there'd be like a new Jeep or a BMW in the drive, and I'd be like, what? At the time, I just didn't think anything of it. But then as I grew older, I was like, hold on, what was going on? How are you this successful as a single contractor? And he walked me through it as like being a businessman and a business owner. And you know, some of the lessons he got from it was around very much military exercise, bringing that into the business world and particularly the personal resilience side of things. But yeah, it was interesting for him to talk about the hours he would put in and the stress and the clients. And I just wish I'd asked him about 2 years earlier about what that was like, because I was going, yeah, I know how that feels, you know, and I wish we'd had that conversation to be, to, I guess, better position me for what was coming with starting a business and the pandemic and stuff. But it's not unique to me. It doesn't change, right? Like, this hard work is for
That's
everyone.
right. Yeah, there's no easy way to learn. And even for your father, I mean, it wouldn't have, like, he would have had to have had it hard out observation, because going from a military world to the business world, I mean, okay, you can cross it over, but I mean, even so, you've got to learn a whole different set of patterns and things. But I suppose it's going to put him in good stead. But the work still has to be done. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work, because you know, you can't talk to your subordinates like you can in the military, you know, and so you turn up and you go into that corporate world, and that's the beautiful thing of military is it's ranked, right? They say shit rolls down the hill because of the military background, and it is like that. But nowadays, especially as we were talking about earlier, you can't talk to even the lowest person like you could in the military. And I guess there's a good and a bad thing, because obviously we've got things like discrimination happening, and we've got these equality challenges. But then there are individuals who are just like cruising through because they know they can't be shouted at and put in their place. And you know, I've certainly worked. I've worked with a lot of people. Yeah,
there's a difference between confidence and like arrogance kind of thing. I mean, and you can sort of. I think some people will cruise on something that kind of looks like it's almost like a it's just a fake confidence or a fake whatever, but it's actually perhaps just hiding arrogance or something, and it's
a little bit gutless. It's putting up the culture of the business or the army and hiding behind that shield because of your position, right?
Yeah, big time.
And you kind of know that. If I was that way inclined, I'd go, I'm going to get to that position, then no one can fuck with me down here. I'll be the man or something.
Yeah. The biggest lesson I think I've taken from a corporate world during the pandemic was the loudmouths are quite literally going out of business. They're losing their rank internally, because when you're all working from home, walking around the office and being loud and proud and the boss doesn't work anymore, and it actually doesn't get any work done. And so you've got this small group of particularly older white males who are, they're in charge. And it's like, but what do you actually do anymore? Because we've been in lockdown for 5 weeks, and I don't even know what you do. And I saw a lot of older senior people actually leave the businesses they're in to start their own one, because they realised their approach to managing people was not going to be effective virtually. And so you get younger, skilled millennials, if you like, who actually did just do the work. They did the grind for 12 hours on their laptop, who were now getting serious promotions. I mean, my partner got a 15% pay rise the other day, which I've never seen that before.
Wow.
And it's because she just got the work done even during lockdown.
Yeah, so I mean, it's based on productivity.
It's shifts.
So that's like something good that's come out of a difficult situation, which is often the way, right?
Yeah. I think I've had interns and very young people coming out of school who are looking to skill up, and first thing I say to them is like, the hard work's really, really important, but you've got to find those opportunities to get into the next stage. And I would almost say maybe all but one of my interns went to a better opportunity with another company because I encouraged them to do that, and I couldn't give them what this next opportunity might give them. and add to that point we were saying earlier, like unless you are driven and want to do that, you're just going to kind of cruise through and not really have a lot of success.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you'd be comfortable potentially, but
yeah, that's hard, and I suppose that's where businesses are trying to engage in like greater meaning behind their business to sort of and give some of the employees ownership of perhaps contributing towards that greater meaning. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's cool. So yeah, man, I like the sound of that. So you've still managed to kind of foster a little community of like-minded individuals, and you can still bounce around ideas and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can I come along?
Yeah, I mean, it's selfish a little bit, but the only thing I wanted to do with Fixinc was just to have cool people hanging around all the time, you know, and that when the collect kind of wrapped up and we all went our separate ways, it was very sad, but at the same time, I was like, I really just want to keep working with these people and catching up, and so. One of our rules is like when we finish a Zoom chat about a project, we never hang up without laughing before we do.
Oh, yeah.
It's always about having a bit of fun, not taking stuff seriously. Always try and have a couple of beers whenever, and just this kind of movement of, work hard, work really, really hard. Don't slack off, because this stuff is just so fragile. And we're just a design and creative agency. We're not changing the world here. So there really is a lot of competition out there. But I'm not worried about that, because as long as we're still doing what we enjoy doing as a group, everything else is just outside. It's irrelevant. No,
it sounds really cool. And having that, like that support, because, you know, you've got your business, but it overflows. You can't compartmentalize yourself and your own health and the business's health and all those different things. You can't kind of just keep them all kind of separate. It is all joined, and it does all kind of...
Those piecemeal approaches, they never work.
No, And it's even better having... even if you can manage that on a personal level, if you've got other individuals and stuff which are there to support you, it's going to be even more, being able to weather a bigger storm.
I think working with Lara in particular, we had a very challenging client, and it was breaking me down physically. And at one point last year, I realised later that I'd had a panic attack and hadn't even... The thing about panic attacks is not like the movies, right? Like you don't necessarily start shaking and need a bag to breathe through. Like I was literally just standing there, and then I was like, I really need to go and lie down. Went and lie down and slept for like 10 hours. And it was like the middle of the day. And then I woke up and I was so weak and just absolutely exhausted. And I was like, what the hell is going on with me? Why have I allowed myself to get to this level? And then on reflection, we would, be working with this client and have a really challenging call with them. And then at the end, we'd hang up, and then Lara would give me a call, and she'd be fine. She'd be like laughing about it. And I'd be like, well, she wouldn't work with me if she knew what I was like outside of this. Do you know what I mean? Like, she knew I just had a panic attack. She'd be like, dude, come on. It's just, these guys aren't that important, And I don't think I never really told her that, but eventually I was just kind of learning from it and going, right, I need to sort my crap out here, because I'm taking this stuff way too personally. And by the end of the year, it was just this epiphany of like, right, I'm good at what I do. We all are. So let's just do what we do. And I think that if I was out on my own, I never would have had that. I would have run myself into the ground, and that would have been bad for health and all sorts. So it is so important to have those people around you to remind you that it's not that important.
100%.
There's weaknesses just get massively exploited and exposed.
It's so great to be able to say I expose a weakness that I have, and someone else to just guide me through it. And, hey, don't worry about it so much. Some of that sort of like bullying sort of leadership people are sort of like out on their own a wee bit. They're going to break. They can't have that vulnerability.
It's only a few more years until the young folks are in charge of these businesses, and change is coming. And I still work with quite an older generation who are doing it the old school way, and it's hanging on. And the pandemic has really proven that that's not effective anymore. People paying big bucks for a website, and the only people who question it are the executive team and the board. You know, why are we paying that sort of money for a website? Because if you don't have one, you will go out of business.
Yeah.
Like, it's a digital world now, you know.
That shows me they're quite out of touch.
Yeah, I mean, there was an example the other day. I can't remember who it was, but it was an executive. I mean, you read the Netflix story, for example, the original founder of Netflix, and he left because it got way too out of his hands. You know, you look at that business that he's grown, and most of it, the concept was him, but most of it, as we know today, was not him. But when he built it, he realised that this thing was going to work, and he needed to immediately get out of the way and get someone, a proper CEO involved, and a board and all this sort of stuff. And imagine if he didn't, it probably would have failed. You look at Blockbuster, for example. I mean, that story is 100% an executive team who didn't want to pivot. And Netflix actually offered Blockbuster to buy them. They went to see them and said, you should buy us because we haven't got the capital for this at the moment, but it's a good idea. And they shoved them away. And 5-10 years later, they go out of business, basically. You know, you got to listen to those little signs, you know.
Yeah, that's intense. And
That's incredible, man.
here's the menu.
So it's this constant situational awareness.
And digital ones, especially businesses, they seem kind of, I don't know whether they're prone to that, but they you know, like they start off with one person or whatever, and they start off with a small team, and then it can explode, and things change dramatically, don't they? You know, sometimes not always for the better.
I was talking to a person who's in charge of big business, and she was very careful just to not expand too quickly, like bit by bit. And I thought, hey, you've been reading Sun Tzu or something, right? But it's like I could see like she just totally knew how important that was, and the business is hyper successful. I could see someone else just screwing it up big time.
Yeah, that's funny, right? Like you look at these billion-dollar businesses that still have the founder as the person in charge, and there's a reason for that. And that's one of the things I've had to learn with Bushman Tours is no one will ever want to do this as much as I do, you know. And when you kind of get that into your head, and then you have people come in and work for you who just aren't quite up to your level, you've got to take that step and go, well, of course they're not going to be as passionate about this as me, but do I want to just keep it as mine and hold it, and maybe it'll never grow, or get as long as I'm involved, get these other skillful people to help. But it's tricky. It's always a personal thing with these sorts of opportunities, right? Like with a business, you're always going to be connected to it more than anyone else if you start it.
It'll always be your child.
Ollie, what would you like for brekkie?
I'd love some sourdough toast, please.
Okay, mate.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Get onto that shortly.
Thank you.
Sweet as. Thanks for coming in and chatting. That's super enlightening.
Cheers, mate. It's been it was really interesting.
I've enjoyed it. It's the earliest I've ever been up, actually. So I didn't even know I could talk at this time.
Likewise. Well, I don't know.
But it's cool. It's definitely...
But only did we talk, we might have even made some sense. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll have to listen back because I don't know.
Cheers, Ollie.
Thanks, guys.
Time for a beer.
Yeah.